Quick one. Last video hit over 100 comments, which is absolutely mind-blowing for this channel. Let's try that again for this video. Comment down what you think about these stories, or just a hello, and the team will reply. We always reply to the comments. As always, please like and subscribe and help this channel grow. Thank you. It was just another lazy Sunday afternoon when I decided to browse eBay to see if I could find any good deals. Money has been pretty tight lately, so I was hoping to find something nice that wouldn't break the bank. I scrolled through the jewelry section, and that's when a pair of diamond earrings caught my eye. They were gorgeous, exactly the kind of earrings I'd always dreamed of owning one day, and the price seemed unbelievable, just $500 for diamonds that had to be at least 2 carats each. I read through the listing carefully. The seller said the earrings were purchased from an estate sale, and they looked completely authentic based on the photos provided. My mind started racing thinking about how amazing it would be to own such exquisite diamond earrings at a fraction of what they are probably worth. Without hesitating, I clicked the Buy It Now button. Over the next few days, I was filled with excitement waiting for my new diamond earrings to arrive. I even bought a beautiful new jewelry box to store them in. I pictured how glamorous I would look wearing them out to a fancy dinner or a night in town. Owning real diamond earrings had been a lifelong dream, and now it seemed they were finally within my grasp. When the package finally showed up, I tore it open eagerly. But as soon as I looked inside, my heart sank. It was obvious within seconds that the diamonds were fake. I inspected them closely under a lamp, and it was clear they were made of cheap crystal and not the real deal. I was furious that someone had tried to scam me and listed counterfeit jewelry as authentic diamonds. I immediately contacted the seller demanding a full refund, but she played dumb, claiming she had no idea the diamonds were not real. We went back and forth for days with her feigning ignorance and refusing to return my money. After getting nowhere, I decided to take more drastic action. I filed claims with eBay and PayPal explaining the situation in detail, hoping they could help recover my money since I was clearly the victim of fraud. I included all documentation I had, photos of the earrings, a copy of the original listing, and my email exchanges with the seller. Now, all I could do was wait and hope eBay and PayPal would side in my favor. About a week later, I had nearly forgotten about the whole ordeal when there was a loud knock at my front door one evening. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 police officers standing there. My pulse started racing, wondering why on earth the cops would be at my house. I hesitantly opened the door. Right away, the officers asked if I was the one who had recently purchased diamond earrings on eBay. When I confirmed it was me, they informed me that the earrings were actually stolen during a violent armed robbery at a downtown jewelry store about a month prior. Apparently, the seller I bought them from was a cousin of one of the robbers, and they were trying to sell off the stolen merchandise online. The cops said they had been monitoring the eBay account for weeks as part of the ongoing investigation to recover all of the stolen items. Now they needed to confiscate the earrings as evidence and take my statement. I was in total shock as I explained to the officers about winning the auction and having the earrings shipped to me. I couldn't believe that I had unwittingly become mixed up in some huge jewelry heist. It was like something out of a movie. I was scared, anxious, angry, and also felt somewhat guilty, even though I clearly had no knowledge about where the earrings had come from. The cops were very interested in any details I could provide about the seller and / how the earrings were shipped to me. I showed them the listing, our messaging history, and the packaging it arrived in. Unfortunately, I didn't have much to offer, since the seller had barely communicated with me at all. Over the next several weeks, I had to give multiple statements to the police and testify about my eBay purchase. It turned into a high-profile case locally with the story all over the news. My name and face were broadcast as one of the victims who unknowingly bought the stolen goods. Having my identity revealed made me feel exposed and anxious about becoming a target for backlash. I also had to deal with the embarrassment and stigma of being associated with a serious crime I had nothing to do with. It was all made worse by the fact that I never saw a penny back from that eBay seller or got the real diamond earrings I had hoped to own. The whole experience ended up being one of the most stressful of my life. Between dealing with the police, courts, and media attention, I felt violated, afraid, and like my reputation was tarnished. I worried what friends, family, and colleagues would think. In the end, the cops were able to recover most of the stolen jewelry and apprehended the armed robbers as well as the eBay sellers. But I was left shaken and unable to trust buying anything online anymore. I became paranoid that I could unknowingly end up with stolen goods again. I learned a hard lesson to be much more careful about purchases on eBay and other sites, and that if something seems too good to be true, it very well may be. To this day, I still feel anxious when I think back to that knock on the door and the sinking realization that I have become entangled in a serious criminal case, all because I impulsively clicked buy on a sketchy eBay listing. I never expected a simple online purchase to turn my life upside down, potentially tarnish my reputation, and lead to so much stress and trauma. It reinforced that there are dishonest people in the world looking to scam others and profit off of that. I will never make that mistake again, and I now thoroughly research sellers and listings before buying anything online. But I will certainly never forget the nightmare I went through over those diamond earrings I thought would be the deal of a lifetime. It left me feeling violated and unable to trust people, especially faceless sellers on sites like eBay. My innocence and optimism were shattered after seeing the dark side of human behavior. While I survived the ordeal, the emotional scars still linger years later. I am much wiser now, but will forever be wary of deals that seem too good to be true. I thought I had scored a great deal on eBay when I bought a used laptop for only $200. The seller's photos showed it to be in pristine condition, and their description claimed it worked perfectly. I was so excited to get such an expensive laptop for so cheap. As a college student on a tight budget, I couldn't pass up the opportunity. After winning the auction, I eagerly awaited its arrival. When it showed up a few days later, I tore open the box excitedly. The laptop looked just as nice as it did in the photos. I powered it on, and it booted up normally. Everything seemed fine at first. The operating system loaded without issue. I connected to my Wi-Fi network and started downloading some programs I needed for school. Over the next few days, I began to notice some odd behavior from the laptop. It would freeze up temporarily or display weird error messages. Certain keys on the keyboard would type the wrong characters. I chalked it up to typical used computer quirks. But then things got worse. The laptop started crashing frequently and corrupting my files. I took it to my tech-savvy friend James to have him take a look. After poking around the system settings and logs, he discovered something chilling. Someone had installed spyware on the laptop that was secretly recording my activities and transmitting the data back to an unknown third party. James said it was similar to the spyware governments will sometimes plan to conduct surveillance. He recommended fully wiping the computer and reinstalling the operating system to remove the malicious software. I was horrified and disgusted that the seemingly nice seller had sent me a laptop intentionally infected with spyware. They had swapped out the hard drive before shipping it to me, preloading it with software to let them monitor everything I did on that computer. All my internet activity, files, logins, and more had been completely exposed. I felt so violated that a total stranger now had access to my private information. James helped me do a full system reset to wipe the spyware. I changed all my passwords as a precaution since the laptop had them saved. I ran security scans daily for weeks afterwards to ensure nothing persisted. I kept expecting more odd behavior, constantly paranoid that I was still being watched through my own computer. My college instructors were thankfully understanding when I explained why I needed extensions on assignments that were lost in the system wipe, but I was still upset about having to spend so much time erasing the laptop and redoing corrupted schoolwork, not to mention how unsettling it felt knowing my personal data had been compromised. I reported the incident to eBay and left negative feedback to warn others, but the seller's account was quickly deleted. I can only assume they were running this scam on unsuspecting bargain hunters like myself. Now, I know buying used electronics online comes with serious risks. I will never make a big purchase on eBay again without thoroughly vetting the seller first. I'll be sure to scan any used devices for spyware before using them for anything private. This experience taught me valuable lessons about online safety and privacy protections, but I'm still angry that someone took advantage of my thriftiness to violate my security for their own gain. I lost time, money, and peace of mind. My enthusiasm for scoring a good deal clouded my judgment. I let my guard down out of excitement over the seeming bargain. In retrospect, I should have been more skeptical of such an inexpensive used laptop being sold in flawless condition. That price should have been the first red flag something was amiss. I guess the cliche is true that if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Now I'm a lot more cautious when it comes to online marketplace deals. I prioritize protecting my personal information over saving a few bucks, and I only buy electronics from reputable sellers, even if that means paying more upfront. This experience was definitely unnerving, but at least it wasn't significantly worse. The spyware was mainly intended to harvest my data, not anything more sinister. Still, having my brand new used laptop corrupted by malicious software made me feel like the character in a horror movie who picks up the wrong hitchhiker. Except instead of a creepy van on a deserted road, it was a bargain laptop on eBay full of virtual stowaways. I'm just glad I escaped relatively unscathed, but I will certainly be more wary in the future. Even though James helped me wipe the system fully, I remained paranoid for weeks that some residual spyware could still be lurking in the laptop's shadows. Every minor glitch made me suspect the seller's malicious software was still secretly operating. I knew it was likely just my mind playing tricks on me, but I couldn't shake the lingering sense of being observed through my own device. I started putting tape over the webcam whenever I wasn't using it, just in case. I know that probably seems excessive, but I didn't want to risk the seller still being able to access it remotely. I also became hyper aware of the laptop's location at all times, so no one could access it behind my back and reinstall spyware if given the chance. I felt a little ridiculous after a while, constantly worrying about hypothetical scenarios like something out of a 90s hacker movie. In the end, after running multiple antivirus scans that detected nothing, I had to force myself to stop imagining catastrophe around every corner. James assured me he had eliminated all traces of the spyware, but my paranoia lingered much longer. Even if the laptop was now secure, my sense of privacy felt irrevocably ruptured. It was like getting your house robbed and then still feeling unsafe months later. Despite eventually regaining some peace of mind, I made an effort to be more conscious of cybersecurity going forward. I enabled two-factor authentication wherever possible and came up with new unique passwords for every account. I also started looking into VPNs and other privacy tools. Since my personal information was now out there after the data breach, I wanted to be proactive about protecting myself better in the future. The emotional toll of having my personal space violated stuck with me as well. I felt both ashamed and angry that someone had taken advantage of my financial situation as a student for their own unethical purposes. Whoever orchestrated this scheme preyed on those seeking affordable tech options, knowing we'd be so dazzled by the rock-bottom prices that we wouldn't look deeper into the seller's legitimacy. While I moved on eventually, it left me more jaded. Now I approach online interactions through a lens of suspicion, especially ones involving anonymous entities or too good to be true offers. I lost a certain wide-eyed technological optimism, forced to acknowledge the existence of scammers and cyber criminals operating brazenly. But despite the bitterness engendered by this experience, it served as a valuable lesson. I have a much greater awareness of online marketplace fraud and the technical intricacies of devices riddled with malware. I'll be able to spot the warning signs easier next time and exercise more caution when pursuing tempting deals from third-party sellers. Moving forward, I'll listen to my gut instead of dollar signs if an offer seems fishy or unreliable at its core. So in an odd way, I'm grateful for what happened. I escaped relatively unscathed considering the damage that could have been done through total access to my digital life. And even if it felt like a violation at the time, I'm now better equipped to prevent such situations in the future. A small price to pay for what amounted to a masterclass in online security and fraud awareness. I emerged warier but wiser with sharp new instincts that will serve me well online. The used laptop may have arrived riddled with virtual termites, but at least I didn't ignore the signs until it collapsed entirely, hitting my data down with it. I can't believe I fell for such an obvious scam on eBay. I'm usually pretty savvy when it comes to online shopping, but this time I let my guard down and got burned. It started when I came across a listing for a rare, mint condition comic book that I had been searching for years to add to my collection. The seller seemed totally legit. He had a long history on eBay with 100% positive feedback. People raved in the reviews about how great he was to deal with and how quickly he shipped. I should have known it was too good to be true. The buy it now price was so low for such a rare book, but the seller had a sob story about needing cash quickly for medical bills. I felt bad for him and figured I could trust him given his flawless reputation. Boy, was I wrong. After I made the purchase, the seller sent a quick message thanking me and saying he would ship it out the next day. I was so excited to finally get my hands on this comic I had coveted for so long. The next day came and went with no shipping confirmation, so I reached out. No response. I waited a few days and tried again. Still nothing. At that point, I opened up a complaint on eBay. That's when things took a really dark turn. I received a message from someone claiming to be the seller's brother saying that he had passed away unexpectedly, and that was why he had not shipped the item. He apologized and said the family would refund me as soon as they could access his account. Shocked and confused, I did some digging. I could find no obituary or any shred of proof that the seller had died. Eventually, eBay investigated and discovered that the seller's account had been hacked. All of his glowing reviews were fake, made by other fake accounts to build up credibility. He had never shipped a single item, just taken money from buyers and then disappeared. I was only out $500 since I got a refund from eBay eventually, but others weren't so lucky. The scam had been going on for months, with the hackers stealing identities of real people and using them to cheat trusting buyers out of thousands. They would just abandon the profile once people caught on and move on to a new stolen identity. It was such a coordinated, deceptive scheme. I still can't believe I got reeled in that they were so convincing. Now I know there are predators lurking on eBay waiting to take advantage of unbeknown collectors like myself. My days of assuming the best in people and taking reviews at face value are over. From now on, I will be verifying identities and taking every precaution possible before sending money to strangers on the internet. This experience shook my faith in humanity a bit, but it also taught me to be more vigilant. I changed all my passwords and enabled two-factor authentication everywhere I could. I'm also sticking to well-established sellers with recent reviews from verified buyers. No more taking chances just to score a coveted comic book or other collectible. It's just not worth the risk of being scammed. In the end, I was lucky I got my money back, but others were not so fortunate. The hackers made off with thousands before disappearing back into the shadows, ready to steal someone else's identity and pull the same scam. It's a sinister racket that preys on collectors obsessed with finding that one elusive item to complete their collection. The lure of a great deal overrides common sense. I learned my lesson the hard way, but I also have a new appreciation for keeping my personal information safe and not blindly trusting strangers on the internet. It may take me longer to find deals on rare collectibles, but that's better than being robbed by a cunning cyber criminal. My eyes are wide open now. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, that's on me. And I won't let it happen again. Looking back, there were a few red flags I ignored in my excitement over the comic book listing. The price was too good to be true for such a rare item. The seller didn't have any recent feedback, just a batch of glowing reviews when he first opened the account months ago. And the sob story about medical bills shouldn't have tugged at my heartstrings enough to override my common sense. I let the opportunity to score my white whale cloud my judgment. But that's what these hackers count on, exploiting people's emotions and desire to complete their collections. They know collectors can become almost obsessive in the hunt for that one elusive comic or trading card that has evaded them. In my case, it was a 1938 Action Comics #1 in pristine condition featuring the first appearance of Superman. There are only a handful of unrestored copies with quality high enough to please demanding collectors. I had seen compromised copies go for over $1 million at auction. So when I came across a listing for one for only $10,000, I jumped at it. The photos looked legit, and the seller promised authenticity guarantees. He said he had fallen on hard times and needed to sell his most prized possession to pay medical bills for his son. What kind of heartless monster would question such a noble sacrifice? Except it was all a ruse designed to exploit my sympathies and short-circuit my critical thinking. Once I made the purchase, dollar signs practically flashed in my eyes. I was already imagining proudly displaying my new comic grail in my collection. I was more focused on where to showcase it than any potential red flags, so I blithely transferred the money and waited for my package to arrive. But it never came. The seller stopped responding and vanished from eBay. That's when I started investigating and uncovered the ugly truth. It was all an elaborate scam by hackers preying on overeager collectors. They had manufactured an entire false identity to pull off the con. The callousness of exploiting someone's medical misfortune was infuriating, but I was angrier at myself for overlooking all warning signs in my quest to obtain a Holy Grail comic. I learned a $10,000 lesson about being vigilant and protecting myself online, no matter how solid a seller may appear. It still pains me that I don't have that Action Comics #1, the crown jewel of any superhero collection, but I also gained something valuable from that experience. The ability to keep my emotions in check and critically evaluate deals that seem too good to be true. Patience and vigilance will eventually help me find that comic grail for a fair price from a seller I can trust. My eyes are wide open now to the predators lurking online, waiting to exploit human emotions and desires. But I won't let it stop me collecting. I just need to be smarter and more cautious to avoid ever being scammed again. This hobby requires diligence and a bit of cynicism. Even my listing seems incredibly tempting. That scam artist thought he could fool me, but all he did was make me wiser and more vigilant. I may be down one extremely rare comic, but I gained something that serves me far better: the patience, perceptiveness, and critical thinking necessary to avoid ever being victimized online again. So in an odd way, it actually came out ahead. I'm usually pretty savvy when it comes to shopping online, but I made a huge mistake last month that I'm still paying for. I got scammed buying designer clothes on eBay that ended up being contaminated. It started when I was browsing eBay one night and came across a seller that had tons of high-end designer items for dirt cheap prices. We're talking Gucci dresses for $50 and Prada handbags for $75. I couldn't believe the deals, so I started adding item after item to my cart. In total, I bought 3 dresses, 2 blouses, a skirt, a handbag, a pair of heels, and a jacket. My total was only $375. I was so excited for my new clothes to arrive. The seller had great feedback and all the items looked legitimate in the photos. When the package arrived a week later, I tore it open eagerly. The clothes inside looked and felt like the real deal. The fabrics and stitching seemed high quality. I couldn't wait to start wearing my new designer outfits. The very next day, I put on one of the dresses and wore it to work. I got so many compliments and felt like $1,000,000. When I got home, I noticed my neck felt a little itchy, but didn't think much of it. Over the next few days, I wore some of my other new clothes. Each time, my skin became increasingly irritated. By the end of the week, I had a red, bumpy rash spreading across my chest, back, and arms. It was incredibly uncomfortable and unsightly. I made an appointment to see my doctor, who examined me and determined I had an allergic contact dermatitis rash. She asked if I had worn or touched anything new lately. As soon as I told her about the clothes I bought on eBay, she suspected they had harsh chemicals on them that caused the rash. We reported the incident to the FDA's Consumer Complaint Department. They opened an investigation into the eBay seller. It turns out the reason the clothes were so cheap was because they were expired, irregular items that had been improperly stored in China for years. The chemicals applied to them before shipping overseas had also fully permeated the fabrics. I was advised to stop wearing the clothes immediately and to wash everything that may have touched them. The rash was slow to clear up, even with prescription steroid creams. I couldn't wear most of my normal tops or dresses because they irritated the inflamed skin on my chest and back. It was so frustrating to deal with this painful rash for weeks, not to mention the money I wasted on worthless clothes. I had to throw out every single item I ordered from that eBay seller. On top of that, I now have hyperpigmentation and scarring from where the rash was worst. I learned the hard way that if a deal looks too good to be true, it probably is. The lure of cheap designer brands made me throw caution to the wind. I should have looked closer at the seller's history and reputation, and I definitely should have washed the clothes before wearing them. Although I'll eventually heal physically, I don't know if my confidence shopping online again will ever fully recover from this experience. I'm sticking to brick and mortar stores for the foreseeable future. This experience has made me much more cautious when shopping online. I now take the time to thoroughly research sellers and always check for any negative reviews or complaints. If I have any doubts, I won't hesitate to move on and find the item from a more reputable source, even if it costs a bit more. My health is far more valuable than scoring a super cheap deal. I've also started paying closer attention to product details and listings, like the fabric content and country of origin. And I vet returns and refund policies before buying. If a seller doesn't accept returns or has strict limits, that's a major red flag. This was an expensive lesson about the risks of online shopping, but I won't be fooled again. From now on, I trust my instincts and don't let unbelievable prices cloud my judgment. My skin has finally healed after several months of using medicated creams and avoiding irritants. The rash left some faint scars across my back and chest, but they faded over time. I still occasionally have minor flare-ups if my skin gets too dry or is exposed to certain chemicals. It's a lingering reminder of the toxic clothes that wreaked havoc on my body. On the plus side, I'm much more diligent about washing new clothes now before wearing them for the first time. Even items bought in stores can have chemical residue or dyes that irritate skin. I don't take any chances after what I went through. While my experience may have made me more cautious, I didn't square off online shopping altogether. There are still good deals to be found if you know where to look. I use shopstyle.com and honey.com to find discount codes and the best prices across multiple retailers. And I rely on customer images and reviews on sites like Amazon and Walmart to evaluate products. The difference now is that I'm a much smarter and well-informed shopper. I don't rush into purchases blindly regardless of the low price tag. And I listen to my gut instinct. If a deal seems questionable, I won't ignore the red flags. My wallet and skin have both benefited from this more selective approach to online shopping. I've always loved antique furniture and decor, so when I saw an antique gilt mirror for sale on eBay a few months ago, I just had to have it. The seller said it was an authentic 19th century mirror that had belonged to a wealthy British family, so I figured it would be the perfect statement piece for my living room. I won the auction for only $200, which seemed like an unbelievable deal at the time. When the mirror arrived a week later, I eagerly unwrapped it from the shipping box and brought it inside. It was even more beautiful than it looked in the photos on eBay, with intricate gold leaf detailing along the thick carved wooden frame. I noticed a small stamp on the back that read, "Made in England, 1867." As I lifted it up onto the nail on the wall, I admired the mirror's flawless beveled glass. It gave my living room an instant touch of elegance that perfectly matched my antique upholstered chairs. Over the next few weeks, I'd often catch odd glints of light flickering across the mirror out of the corner of my eye. At first, I figured it must be sunbeams bouncing off the glass, but the flickers of light persisted randomly, even at night and on cloudy days. Initially, I thought it might be car headlights shining in through the front windows, but the flashes were too frequent for that. I started to feel a bit uneasy about the strange reflections, but shrugged it off. One cold, rainy evening in October, I decided to take a closer look at the antique mirror to try to figure out what was causing the odd glints that had been distracting me. Running my fingers slowly along the back of the heavy frame, I felt a tiny ridge along the inner edge that didn't seem right. I flipped the mirror around to inspect further and was shocked to discover a small pinhole camera lens embedded in the ornate carved wood. My heart started pounding rapidly as I frantically detached the mirror from the wall and laid it face down on the floor. Someone had clearly installed a hidden camera inside this antique mirror and had been spying on me in my own home. I started to tremble, feeling violated and afraid as I pondered the unsettling implications. How long had this covert camera been recording private footage inside my living room? Who could be watching me? And why had they specifically targeted me? Were they planning to use the footage for perverse or nefarious purposes? I wanted to smash the antique mirror in disgust, but realized I should keep it intact in order to preserve evidence. Instead, I retrieved a small Phillips head screwdriver from my toolbox and carefully disassembled the back of the frame until I located the hidden camera's wiring. My hands shook as I grasped the tiny surveillance camera, clutching it in my palm like a bitter pill. Surprisingly advanced and miniaturized for its tiny size, it had onboard storage, wireless connectivity to enable live streaming, and a wide-angle lens that could see the entire room. After some frantic Googling, I learned the camera was a covert nanny cam type device that could transmit a 24/7 live video feed over the internet to whoever had installed it. The thought of some creep watching a real-time broadcast stream from my living room made me want to vomit. I felt so violated. My home had always been my safe haven, and now that sense of peace and privacy had been horribly ruptured by this sinister hidden lens. I filed a police report, but they said there was little they could do without knowing the identity of the perpetrator. eBay refused to provide any information about the seller either, citing privacy policies. I wanted to warn others, but the seller's account had already been deleted. Fortunately, I still had the original box with a return address, which gave me some hope. The violated antique mirror went straight in the trash, smashed to satisfying pieces on the curb. I immediately hired a professional technical surveillance security firm to thoroughly sweep my entire home for any additional hidden bugs or cameras. The mirror camera appeared to be an isolated incident, thankfully, but my sense of security in my home felt shaken to the core. In the aftermath, I gave up buying antiques and collectibles online altogether. I realized that unbelievable deal was clearly too good to be true. Now I only purchase decor items from reputable local stores, even if I have to pay higher prices for peace of mind. I had learned my lesson the hard way about the dangers and risks that can lurk in the largely unregulated, anonymous wild west of online marketplaces like eBay. My home finally feels peaceful again now, though I still get anxious chills if I imagine too vividly where that illicit footage could have ended up on the dark web. The antique mirror may just be garbage and shards now, but I still feel haunted knowing that a stranger violated my privacy and sense of security within my own walls. I doubt I'll ever fully trust buying anything on eBay again after that nightmare experience. The paranoia still lingers, even though the camera is long gone. I'm much more cautious about what I bring into my home now, since my inner sanctum was so brutally violated in such an insidious way. I'm usually pretty savvy when it comes to shopping online, but this time I really messed up. I was looking for a new coffee table for my living room and found a great deal on eBay for a vintage mid-century style table. The seller didn't provide much information, just a short description and a few photos that showed some minor scratches and watermarks. I figured I could fix it up pretty easily, so I bought it. After a few days, the table arrived. At first glance, it looked just like the photos, an inexpensive solid wood table that needed some TLC. I started cleaning it with a rag to remove the dust and grime, and that's when things started getting weird. As I wiped down the legs, I noticed one was hollow. I shone a flashlight inside and could see something stuffed deep in the opening. I tentatively reached in and pulled out a dirty envelope. My hands shook as I opened it up and found old Polaroids inside, pictures of a woman bound and gagged in various positions. My heart dropped into my stomach. Who was this woman? Was she hurt, or worse? I frantically emptied the rest of the lead compartments, finding more disturbing items. More Polaroids, this time of a man yelling and cowering as if he was being abused. Receipts and ledgers documenting apparent illegal activity. And strangest of all, locks of hair taped to notebook paper scrawled with creepy messages. I didn't know what to think. The table I had casually purchased secondhand obviously had a dark history I was now unwittingly part of. I couldn't go to the police. They'd confiscate the table and everything inside as evidence. But I couldn't stand to keep it in my house either. The contents seemed to suggest the previous owner was into some seriously shady stuff that I wanted no part of. I decided to dispose of the table and everything inside. Late at night, I loaded it into my truck and drove out to a wooded area miles from my home. I doused the table with gasoline, lit a match, and watched it go up in flames, bringing its sinister secrets with it. The fire raged as all the photographic evidence turned to ash. Part of me wondered if I should have gone to the authorities, but the other part was simply relieved to be rid of the table and to close this terrifying chapter. I drove home tense and jittery, constantly checking the rear view mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed. After that night, I had trouble sleeping. Every small noise would jolt me awake. I realized I was paranoid that the previous owner would somehow find me and seek retribution. But as time passed, the anxiety began to fade. I felt like I could finally put the whole creepy ordeal behind me. However, one thing still nagged at me. Where did that table come from? My imagination ran wild thinking about its history. Had it belonged to a stalker, abuser, killer? I wish I knew, and yet some mysteries are better left unsolved. The contents of that table will be forever burned in my memory. I learned my lesson. No more bargain hunting on eBay for me. From now on, I'll only buy from reputable retailers, even if it costs more. Peace of mind is priceless. I'm just thankful I escaped that situation unharmed, unlike whoever was captured in those disturbing photographs. I still shudder when I think about what secrets I unearthed in that old coffee table. It just goes to show you never really know what's inside something or someone until you start digging deeper under the surface. I dug way too deep for comfort this time, and I'm lucky to have made it out intact. In the following weeks, I became obsessed with trying to uncover the history of the table and its previous owner. I knew it was a bad idea to get sucked back into this creepy mystery, but I couldn't seem to help myself. I started browsing eBay again, looking at old sold listings, trying to see if the table had been posted there before. Of course, there was no trace of it. Whoever sold it to me was long gone. I even went to the local library and spent hours scrolling through online newspaper archives, looking for any stories that might be connected to the Polaroids and other documents I'd found. Again, I came up empty. No reports of missing women, no arrests of abusive men, no unsolved crimes that seemed to match up. My restless late night researching started to take a toll on my daily life. I was exhausted all the time, yet I still couldn't tear myself away from the search. I became withdrawn and irritable as I spent every free moment glued to the computer screen. My girlfriend finally had to stage an intervention. She made me promise to stop obsessing over the mysterious table and focus on our relationship again. I wanted to tell her everything in hopes she would understand my fixation, but I knew involving her would only put her at risk too. So I lied and said work stress was getting to me, bound to cut back my hours online. It helped for a while, going on dates and weekends away with her. But when I was alone, my thoughts always drifted back to the Polaroids, the ledgers, the locks of hair, wondering about the sinister story behind them. A story I realized I might never know. Eventually, the intensity of my obsession faded. My girlfriend was relieved to have the old me back, though I still carried this dark secret with me. I doubt I'll ever be able to fully forget what I discovered that fateful day. Opening up that table unlocked a Pandora's box that can never be shut again. I'm left with a lingering sense of unease, feeling like the ghost of that table still haunts me somehow. Maybe it always will on some level. They say ignorance is bliss, and I didn't fully grasp how true that was until I learned too much about the darkness that can lurk unseen all around us. My innocent bargain hunting days are over, but the memories of that bizarre eBay find will never leave me. I've been an eBay user for years. I love finding deals on collectibles, vintage items, and weird stuff you can't get anywhere else. Usually, my experiences have been positive, but last month, I had an interaction with a seller that really shook me up. I was browsing eBay late one night when I came across an auction for an antique music box. The detailed description said it played an odd, haunting melody that the seller couldn't identify. I love unique antiques and curiosities, so I put in a bid right away without thinking too much about it. To my surprise, I won the auction at a great price. The seller had messaged me promptly for my shipping address. At first, the messages were perfectly polite and professional, but over the next few days, they took on a strange, almost threatening tone. The seller said things like, "I know this music box was meant for you, and it will bring you sweet dreams." I shrugged it off as slightly eccentric behavior. When the package arrived, I was stunned by how ornate and beautiful the music box was. Winding the mechanism, that eerie melody tinkled out. It was mesmerizing, but also gave me chills down my spine. The tune just seemed to drill itself into your mind, like it was taking control of your very thoughts. Intricate carvings of flowers and vines covered the wooden box, which looked positively antique. Holding it in my hands, I could feel a sense of history, like it had passed through decades or even centuries to find its way to me. Later that night, I was woken by my phone buzzing with a new message. It was from the eBay seller. "I hope you were enjoying my gift at Reed." How bizarre for them to message me in the middle of the night after the sale was complete. Then they sent another message, "I'll be watching over you." Now I was really creeped out. Who messages a stranger at 2 a.m. just to say something so eerie? Over the next few weeks, the messages kept coming at odd hours. The seller referenced things about me they should have no way of knowing. My birthday, my pet's name, the street where I grew up. I never shared any personal details with them, so how could they have uncovered all this information? The messages got increasingly threatening, saying things like, "You belong to me now." I was terrified someone was stalking me. I tried to rack my brain and recall if I had ever shared my address or full name publicly online. I'm usually so careful about protecting my privacy. Somehow this seller, this complete stranger, had pried into my personal life and knew things only my closest friends knew. I went to eBay to report the messages, but the seller's account had vanished. All contact information and transaction records were erased. It's like they were never there. Their user profile picture was just a blurry black shadow, no identifying details at all. I tried finding the seller online and contacted the police, but hit dead ends everywhere. The police said they couldn't do much without more evidence of a crime, but I knew this person was obsessed with me and potentially dangerous. I debated getting rid of the music box, but couldn't bring myself to. I'd become obsessed with the hypnotic melody, listening to it every night. My dreams became filled with vivid nightmares I couldn't shake off in the morning. Dreams of being watched by someone in the shadows, followed down empty streets late at night. I kept isolating myself more and more, afraid to leave the house. I just sat alone in my room watching that music box endlessly turn, playing its melancholic tune. One night, over the music box refrain, I heard a crash coming from downstairs. I froze in fear. A shadowy figure ascended the stairs, muttering things only the eBay seller could know. Dread flooded me when I realized the messages were not just threats. The seller was unhinged enough to track me down. As the intruder creaked open my bedroom door, the music slowed to a stop, leaving just the sound of my racing heart. I was paralyzed, unable to even cry for help. A hooded figure loomed in the doorway, practically invisible in the darkness except for a long, twisted grin. "I told you I'd find you," a voice hissed. "You should not have kept my gift." The figure glided towards me almost supernaturally fast, their face still concealed in shadows. I wanted to run but could not move a muscle. How could this be happening? Was I still having another nightmare? They grabbed my wrist with an icy cold hand that felt barely human. The touch seemed to turn my blood to sludge, making me numb and unable to resist. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. "You are mine now, forever," the voice said. They placed their hands on either side of my head. Their grasp felt like frigid metal clamps tightening around my skull. I sensed my consciousness starting to fray at the edges. The melody of the music box seemed to echo once more through the room, though the box remained still and silent. As my vision darkened, I wished for nothing more than to wake up from this nightmare. But deep down, I knew this was perverse reality, not a dream. I had let this eBay sender into my mind and my life. Now they were staking a claim, imprinting themselves onto my very being. I realized I would never be free of them. Wherever I went, whatever new identity I tried to take on, they would follow me. Something had bound us together irrevocably, perhaps from the moment I first heard the music box tune. As my thoughts spiraled into oblivion, I gave one last fleeting fight against the force invading my mind. But it was too late. My consciousness blinked out like an extinguished candle. The room went cold and silent. I still had no idea who the eBay seller was or how they found me and broke in that night. I changed my locks and moved, but still constantly watch over my shoulder, afraid they will return. I'd never feel fully safe anymore after being stalked and tormented by that stranger on eBay. Sometimes at night, the melody of the music box echoes through my mind, reminding me of the horror unleashed by that mysterious package. I'll regret making that fateful bid for the rest of my life. That one seemingly innocuous click irrevocably changed me, opened me up to a darkness I can never fully shut out again. No matter where I go, the music follows. I've always been kind of a bargain hunter, prowling clearance racks and scoping out sales. But I have to admit I got duped once by a too-good-to-be deal on eBay. I should have known better, but the lure of brand-name batteries at rock-bottom prices clouded my judgment. It started when I was browsing eBay one night, just kind of killing time looking at random stuff. I often find myself falling down weird little eBay rabbit holes, starting with something innocent like vintage lunchboxes and ending up 3 hours later looking at bulk lots of Y2K survival gear. I guess something about sorting by price and seeing what oddities emerge appeals to the bargain hunter in me. On this particular night, I somehow landed on a category for wholesale battery lots. Now I'm the first to admit I have a probably excessive number of half-used packs of batteries lying around my house. Remnants from various remote controls, kids' toys, and other gadgets that chewed through them. So the idea of having a huge supply of cheap batteries on hand seemed pretty appealing. I came across a listing for a bulk pack of 200 AA batteries, the kind you use in TV remotes and kids' toys. The brand was one of the major ones, can't recall if it was Duracell or Energizer. Anyway, the price was unbelievably cheap, like 90% off retail. My first thought was it had to be a scam or knockoffs, because there's no way you can get a deal like that from a name brand. But reading through the listing, it made a reasonably convincing case. The seller claimed these were excess inventory from a big box retailer that had ordered way more than they needed. Rather than shipping them back to the manufacturer at a loss, the retailer was blowing them out cheap. The listing had pictures of pallets stacked high with these battery boxes in a warehouse. In the back of my mind, I knew it seemed sketchy, like one of those deals that's clearly too good to be true. But the seller had decent feedback with no major red flags, and I let myself get suckered in by the thought of scoring a windfall of premium batteries at clearance prices. Even with shipping, it came out to like 50 cents per battery. What did I have to lose? So, against my better judgment, I hit buy it now and I completed the purchase. The order confirmation screen showed up and I felt that little rush you get from snagging a killer bargain. Maybe these would all be duds, but hey, you can never have too many batteries around the house, right? The batteries arrived on my doorstep a few days later. A huge box that must have weighed 30 pounds. I lugged it inside excitedly and tore open the packaging, eager to see my haul. Everything looked legit. Individually packaged batteries with a brand name wrapper neatly stacked in rows. No signs of damage or anything suspicious. I started loading them into the heap of various remotes and kids' toys that tend to accumulate in our family room. Most of the existing batteries were run down to almost nothing, so I was able to swap almost all of them out. I felt that smug satisfaction that comes from being prepared and having ample supplies. No more scavenging for AAs to keep the TV clicker working or the kids' toys from dying mid-play. I had hit the battery jackpot, or so I thought. Over the next couple of weeks, I started to notice some issues. A couple of the remotes stopped working, even loaded with these fresh batteries. The kids would be playing with a toy that suddenly powered off for no reason. At first, I figured it was just normal electronics being finicky, but it kept happening. I was going through batteries much faster than seemed right. About a month after I got the batteries, the real disaster happened. I popped a pair into an LED lamp on my nightstand one evening and dozed off reading a book. At some point, I was jolted awake by a huge bang and the smell of burning plastic and chemicals. One of the batteries had apparently exploded, and the whole lamp was now engulfed in flames. I reacted on pure instinct, grabbing the lamp off the nightstand and chucking it into the master bathroom shower. I cranked the water on full blast, filling the room with clouds of foul-smelling smoke, but at least preventing the fire from spreading. My bedroom curtains had been partially melted and blackened. A few more minutes, and the whole room would have gone up. My hands were burned, and I was still in shock, but all I could think was, what the hell happened? It dawned on me that there must be something wrong with the batteries from that eBay lot. The next morning, I started testing all the remaining ones. Sure enough, several more began expanding, getting hot and leaking nasty chemicals within minutes of being loaded into a flashlight or remote. They were clearly defective in some way, prone to overheating or exploding. It finally clicked. These must have been faulty batteries, probably recalled for safety reasons. That would explain why they were being blown out for 90% off rather than returned to the manufacturer. The company had likely recalled them months ago after reports of explosions and fires, but this dangerous stock had somehow ended up being resold in shady boat lots on eBay. I did some searching online and found plenty of reports of problems with this brand's batteries, same date codes as the ones I'd purchased. The company had done a huge recall, but the dangerous batteries still ended up filtering out to the public through disreputable distributors. I reported the situation to eBay and tried contacting the battery manufacturer, but never got any compensation for the damages. I guess I'm lucky my house didn't burn down. But I learned my lesson. When a deal seems way too good to be true, it almost certainly is. There's always a catch. Now I only buy batteries from reputable local retailers, even if I pay more. It's not worth the risk to buy from faceless sellers online just to save a few bucks. I've embraced paying full price for batteries from sources I trust, unlikely as that seemed to my bargain-hunting self. I may spend more on essentials, but I also sleep better knowing my home and family are safe. We haven't had any more battery explosions or electrical fires since swearing off sketchy discount battery lots. Turns out peace of mind is worth a lot more than scoring rock-bottom prices from questionable sources. So I'll happily pay those premium prices and skip the lure of dicey bulk battery bonanzas. Once burned, twice shy, I guess you could say. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.